Beautiful. So as you heard, my name is Sasa, and I'm going to be leading a workshop today about worship traditions, specifically poetic worship traditions, and how those can be used and applied to our work as poets and as Shia poets, specifically writing about the Aakil Bayt. So this is a very broad topic, and it covers a wide range of histories and overlaps with all kinds of fun things. So I'm going to take the time to do an overview of like a couple, not nearly all of the worship traditions in the world, just three. And then we're going to talk about how we can apply that in our own writing and in our own poetry. So before we do any of that, I am going to do my usual writing workshop kind of intros and asks from all of you, because this is going to be both like a Sasa talking a lot lecture and a writing workshop where I'm going to have all of us write together. So to begin this workshop, I would first like to share my two philosophies that I bring to every writing workshop that I have. Does everybody in here identify as a poet? Can I get just like a show of hands? Yes. Okay. And I'll assume that Asad also has a yes. Um, so this is great because then you guys maybe might know what I mean when I say this. I have a deep, deep held philosophy that I cherish, that everything is poetry. I believe this about everything that I write. I believe this about everything that other people write. I believe it about the sky and the ground and the colors that I see in the world. I believe that everything is poetry. And what makes something poetry is that you or I or whoever creates it decides that it's a poem. So one funny example of that is I hosted my open mic, 2 days ago on Friday. And there was a police report from a raid that had happened on a home in my family's neighborhood. And I read that. That was my poem because it was a poem, according to me. So this is my belief that everything is poetry. And this is what I bring into all of my workshops. And so I hope you guys can, if you don't believe that in general, at least when you're in this space, believe that with me. My second belief is that everyone is a poet. And I believe this from everyone to me, to all of you here, to my cat that I had growing up, to my grandmother who talks with the rhythm of every old Southern Black woman. I believe it about all of us. So again, if you don't believe that, just for this next like hour and a half to 2 hours, believe that with me in this space as we go into this writing experience. Sound good? Sound doable? Yeah, okay, cool. Thank you very much. With that said, I'm going to do my little framework of what I want you guys to tell me about yourselves, and then you guys can share as well. So my name is Sasa, as you heard. I am based in Silver Spring, Maryland on the East Coast. What brought me here today is that me and Naki were trying to figure out what workshops we were going to do, and we came up with all of these great ideas. And then we couldn't figure out who could teach this specific one except me. So that's what brought me here today, because this is an area of interest for me personally. And my favorite word is audacious. So I would like y'all to share, and I'll put it in the chat, your name, your location, what brought you here, and your favorite word. And since we're all poets, I expect to hear some really fun words. So can we start with Zain?
I was hoping you weren't going to start with me, because it's like 1 hour till I break my fast. Um,
Oh,
yeah, so my name is Zen, and I'm just going to see what the points are here. Did you send in the chat the things I'm supposed to cover?
it looks like
I can only see
private,
Nucky.
yeah, I accidentally private messaged instead of sending it to everyone.
Oh,
So
here we go. I
here we
found
go.
it. Okay, boom. My name's Zen Awan. I go by the sort of online. I have like an account called Zen Speaks. I'm based in Peterborough. I guess what brought me here is that I'm always looking for an opportunity to delve into something which um I'm interested in, but want to learn a bit more technically, right? And to always see a different perspective. Any given opportunity to hear other poets, to learn from them, is a huge part of I think my practice and being inspired by what exists out there, and to compare that with the sort of literary background I'm interested in and I come from. So it's always good, I think, for me personally. That's what brought me here. And more than that as well, like Nucky was saying that this is going to be a good workshop. So I sacrificed going to an iftar today at a friend's house to come to the workshop. So I'm looking forward to this. My favorite word, I think, favorite word, I like a lot of the Greek devices. So, in terms of literary devices, I find like a lot of the Greek tragedy devices are things which I like to play upon. And maybe because I've used it a lot in my work and not just religious poetry, poetry which I've written on other subject matters. I think by now Nucky would know this as well. My favorite word is nostos. And I guess that's this whole idea of that idea of like retelling, reimagining. That's what that word means for me, repositioning, and that's the job of a poet. It can be the whole idea of nostalgia and homecoming, but for more importantly for me, it's all about the idea of like repurposing, and that's the job of a poet. And that's why everything becomes poetry, because especially when we recount things and we tell and we narrate. So yeah, nostos for me is my favorite word.
That's a dope word. Thank you for sharing. And I hope that this workshop lives up to the hype.
No, I'm super
That's high
excited
stakes.
for it. I'm super excited for it because I think Sasa, you're a very talented poet.
Thank
And
you.
it's always good to like I work within sort of the British poetry scene, so I'm always trying to see how what's happening across the pond. And I think there's very
Mhm.
different ways of how we interact with poetry, even though that we use a
Mhm.
common language. So I think it's always nice to have that. And I can see other friends I've joined as well, so I'm excited for that too. There's some more British
Wonderful.
representation.
Wonderful. Welcome, British friends. Can I popcorn over to Michonne? Is that how you pronounce your name?
Yes, hi, I'm Michonne.
Hello.
I'm Michonne Glover. I'm located in Clinton, Maryland, so not far from Silver Spring.
Hmm.
Um, what brought me here was Sasa's post. I saw you post about the workshop, and I've been wanting to just get more light skill, doing a lot of different workshops, just trying to
Mm,
try different styles, see what's out there. I feel like I'm more so a new poet, but it's something I've did throughout my whole lifetime. But I guess I'm taking it more seriously now. Um,
very
at
cool.
this stage in my life. And my favorite word right now is probably abundance.
Beautiful word. Okay, I have two things to say. One, can I ask you where you grew up?
I grew up in Chesapeake, Virginia. I
Okay,
know
cool.
my
That
voice is
explains the
way
accent.
more southern than
Yeah, I was like, I am, that is not an Eastern Maryland accent. I'm like, what am I
yeah.
hearing?
No, I grew up in Chesapeake, Virginia.
Very cool. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. And then I just wanted to let you know that a lot of this workshop I've written up from the perspective of Shia Muslims, assuming that people have that background knowledge of what that is. So I will try to adapt some of my language to make sure that I'm giving more information. But if you have any questions, please just raise your hand or even private message me in the chat if you don't want to ask publicly. But just so you know, that's the perspective that I'll be coming into this workshop with.
Okay.
But we'll be talking about poetry generally. So I hope you
Okay.
can get something from it either way.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, can I popcorn to Assad?
Hey everyone. Sorry, I'm in a car right now, so I'm gonna keep my camera off. Um, but yeah, I'm in the greater Toronto area, in Canada, and what brought me here, I feel like personally, I've always been fascinated by different traditions in mourning, and even though they
Mm,
seem very different and they are different based on culture and background of people, there's always some interconnectedness in how we sort of express our mourning and how different people put their perspective. So I'm really interested in that. My favorite word, that's difficult, but maybe um, paradox. I feel like I remember the
mm,
first time I heard that word and learned what it was. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And yeah, I feel like we're always surrounded by a lot of different paradoxes. So probably that. And thanks
Very
for
cool.
hosting this workshop. I'm really looking forward to this.
Of course. That's a very good word. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, wonderful. Last but not least, or actually, wait, I guess we have to do Brother Nahi as well. So, not last, Ramiz, is that how you pronounce your name? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's perfect. Assalamualaikum, everyone.
Wonderful.
So, my name's Ramiz. I am one of Name's British friends. So, I am in close by-ish to London. I'm actually very excited about today. I think this is the first one that I have attended, but I've watched the Poets of the Household for a little while, and I've been keen to get engaged somehow, some way. So, I'm happy to be here in that respect. In terms of what brought me here, I think partly because of that, two other things as well. I think I have, over the past couple of years, I've been trying to understand a bit more about my style of writing. And I think I've gotten to a stage where I feel a bit more confident with knowing what my style is like. And I would like to now, number one, learn other people's styles and kind of take from that what I can. So hopefully hone in on that a little bit more. Because I think if I can compare my style to other poets through like workshops, through discussion, I think I'll better be able to understand my style as well. So I think that's another thing that came to mind, and I also follow you, Sasa, in terms of your poetry, and I'm keen to learn from you today. In terms of my favorite word, that's an interesting question. I think a word that's been coming to my mind a lot recently is serendipity. So that's what I'd probably mention. I think serendipitously as well. Actually, I originally translated the time of 1 p.m. EST to 6 p.m., which is an hour from now. So serendipitously, I came across the Instagram, which said that we're starting now. So I jumped on, thankfully, because of that. But yeah,
Very
that's
nice.
the word that's come to mind for me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. I'm glad that you are following and open to learning. So again, I hope that the workshop is beneficial for everyone. And we just had someone else join us. So I am going to put our little framework back in the chat just so our newest member can see. We're sharing our name, our location, what brought us here, and favorite word. So we'll jump over to Naki and then we'll go to our new member who just joined.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Naki. I'm also based out of the Greater Toronto area, close to Asad, kind of the outskirts of Toronto. What brought me here today, I think, growing up, I've come from a background of like Urdu poetry, and so I know that lineage and that tradition pretty well, but I think I've never been too familiar with other worship traditions. And I want to see how poetry and other worship traditions has been done historically. Also, how can we, adapt that context for Shia poetry or Muslim poetry going forward as well. And so that's one thing I'm interested in. Favorite word, that's a tough one, but I think like one word that I say too much is probably perspective. Just offering different perspectives, looking at different perspectives, and poetry itself is like offering a perspective on things. So maybe perspective.
That's a good one as well. Thank you very much for sharing, and thank you for all the work that you do to make this event and this programming overall possible. So we appreciate you. Namaya.
Salam, everyone. I'm Namaya, and I am based out of Pakistan, Karachi. What brought me here is that I think I resonate with a lot of things that Naki said. I'm very, very familiar with the poetry and the styles of the subcontinent. And I think I'd been seeing so many of those videos, especially like the, I think, sacred. I'm not really sure. I think I'm messing up the word, but just those clips where, yeah, it was so amazing to see and very, very interesting and very, very powerful. So I thought I would just register and see how it goes. About my favorite word, I think, for me, I think it will be reflective or reflections, anything to do with that. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here all the way from Pakistan. That's crazy. I appreciate your presence. Okay, so that's all of us. I hope that we kind of are comfortable with the people that are in the room. I'm excited to share with all of you, and as I said, I hope it's beneficial. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to share my screen, which I think I just started. But also my laptop is like from 2021 and it's getting slow. So if there are any technical difficulties, please put it in the chat. You guys might notice something that I don't. So that's going to be how we're going to move through this, and hopefully everything is going to go smoothly, but no promises. So I'm going to, beautiful. Is everything loaded up for you guys? Can I just get a thumbs up?
Yep.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. All right. So poetic worship traditions in Islam and around the world. So when I say around the world, I mean just like 2 continents that, I think are represented in the Zoom call itself. And I would have loved to share more, but we just kind of don't have the time. So my button isn't working. What we're going to talk about today is what are worship traditions, some examples of them, why they matter to us, and then we're going to go through British Christian, African American, and Shia traditions, and then we're going to write, which hopefully is fun. All right. So, what are worship traditions? Worship traditions are the cultural and religious practices of a people that are dedicated to remembering God and or religious figures. So there are a variety of worship traditions across the world, and they intersect both religion and culture. So there are some worship traditions that are cultural, and anyone in that culture will practice them, whether or not they're in the same religion. And then there are some traditions that are religious and transcend culture, but are only practiced by people in that specific religion. So we can all think of examples. There's a broad array, but for example, I have some pictures here. We have worship as in prayer, we have worship as in dua, we have artwork, we have poetic styles, etc. So typically these traditions fall into the 3 categories that I have listed here: rituals, art, and poetry. That is very, very broad. But essentially it's things that we do with our bodies or practices that we have, recitations that we have for ourselves. And then there are poems that are typically, there are artworks that are typically about remembering, exalting, deifying sometimes. And then we also have poetry that's about remembering, and also kind of connecting ourselves with these people. And so it's very interesting because our traditions are always about, when they get into the artistic form, they're always about kind of giving us access to what we believe is divine. And so I'm an art history nerd. So I have some like Gothic and like classical renditions of Christian worship paintings. But basically, I'm gonna try not to talk too much about them. But we see in mostly the European American histories, we're connecting by bringing people down to our levels, bringing our spiritual, our higher beings down to our level through iconography, religious iconography that employs things like gold and light. We also have things like reliquaries in the Catholic tradition, which I think are like super weird, but also very interesting, where it's a body part of a saint preserved in a beautified item. And then we also have in Shia Islam, we have our shrines, and we have these places where we go and are also beautified. And we also have the buried bodies of our imams and their family members. And so these are all different parts of these worship traditions. These are all pieces that come together to form what we do and what we consider to be worship. Whether we are going to these places just to remember these people, whether we're going to these places to connect to Allah, to our God through them, whether we are praying, whether we are writing, whether we are painting. This is like my favorite painting almost in the world by Henry Ossawa Tanner. It's called The Annunciation, and it's about the moment where Mary is visited by the angel. So That's me being a nerd. But we have all of these different ways of being and ways of understanding our worship through art and then also through these physical practices. Makes sense, right? Cool. I'm getting one nod. So the question is, why does this matter? And of course, today we're going to be focusing on poetic traditions. But again, like, why does this matter? Why is this something that we're talking about in any capacity? Worship traditions are important, I think, for any religious people, but specifically, I think, for Shia Muslims in the West. Our poetic worship traditions are super important because we are caught in this place between tradition, culture, and innovation. So we have our traditional Shia practices of remembering the Ahlul Bayt through poetry that are long, long, long held and believed to be beautiful and cherished in our faith, and are encouraged by our Ahlul Bayt meaning the family of the Prophet and his descendants. And then we also have these practices that are part of our cultures. And so whether or not, in my case, because I'm African American, my cultural practices are mostly based in Christianity. For many people on this call, cultural practices of worship are based in South Asian practices, which are a combination of heavy Muslim influences along with like Hindu influences. And so we have these cultures, and then we're in this country where English is the language spoken, and it's not the language of the people who were defining these cultures and defining these traditions for generations before us. And so we're like, okay, now we have to make stuff up. And I think this is where we get into the part of innovation. And so what we're doing is we're creating a genre and adding to the canon every time we write in this tradition of lamentation and remembrance, which is what I call it, as part of remembrance and verse. But we are trying to figure out where we fit in this canon, and we're trying to figure out how to make new and how to cherish and preserve the old. And so knowing these worship traditions and being aware of them allows us to really expand and innovate further in this genre that we're creating. And my slideshow is not sliding. Oh, there we go. So the first tradition that we're going to talk about is British devotional poetry. I think, and I think my British brothers can attest to this. I think it's very unique being a poet writing in English, specifically on the continent of England. I mean, on the country of England, not the continent, because the oldest English poetic traditions we have are there. For a poet like me, based in the US, any ancient, the oldest poetry that I'm referencing, which is only, of course, like a couple hundred years old, which is crazy. But that is pretty much coming from England, the UK overall. And so going back to this poetry is something that I, as an American poet, am also constantly doing. And so devotional poetry is an expression of religious worship or prayer. It's a large, varied genre, large, varied category of verse distinguished from secular poetry of all kinds. So essentially, it can be anything, but it's not secular. That's what we know about British devotional poetry. And typically it's characterized by having deep emotional themes, characterized by having thoughts on mortality, which often intersects with like memento mori paintings and visual artwork as well, and a lot of themes about love. And so when poets are writing in this genre, typically they're thinking about those different themes, and often they're addressing God directly, which I think is interesting because in a lot of my context, in a lot of the poetry that we deal with here in the US, poets are not conversing directly with God. So I'm gonna ask for a volunteer to read out this poem as soon as it loads by George Herbert.
I was gonna say it has to be a British person because it fits way better.
To get
I'm
the
happy
accent.
to do it. I'm happy to put myself out there.
All right, yes, the whole poem is on screen for you.
Lovely. Also, I messaged Sasa. Forgive me for my camera being off. I may be moving location in a few minutes.
No worries, I saw it and you're all good.
Awesome. Okay, so this is entitled The Altar. A broken altar, Lord, thy servant rears, made of a heart and cemented with tears, whose parts are as thy hand did frame, no workman's tool hath touched the same. A heart alone is such a stone as nothing but thy power doth cut, wherefore each part of my hard heart meets in this frame to praise thy name, that if I chance to hold my peace, these stones to praise thee may not cease. O let thy blessed sacrifice be mine, and sanctify this altar to be thine.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for reading that out. I think the British accent did make it better. And I forgot to mention this out loud, although it was on the slide. Please, as we're going through this, be very intentional with your listening and pick out a line from any of these samples that we're going to be looking at that resonates with you. So you can just write it down real quick, or you can just keep it in your head, but we're going to be using that for the writing period later on. Does anybody have thoughts or just initial feedback about this poem or anything that they noticed?
I can see that it's like a visual poem, like it talks about an altar, but it also has a shape of the altar. So it's, a poem that represents or is shaped in the shape of the subject matter.
A concrete poem. That's actually, I did not notice, which is crazy. But that is true. Anybody else? No one else has thoughts?
So I think this
Yes.
is in terms of like our traditions as well, we could actually classify this almost like a munajat, because it's like an intimate ode. I read it in that way. So the poem itself becomes the act, the words themselves become like a supplication in itself, becomes an the process of, and that's what I think is quite special about devotional poetry. The process of writing it is worship. The process of reading it is worship. The process of listening to it is worship, or it's sacred. So, and even visually looking at it, I saw the altar as well. So for me, I think it's some really, really beautiful lines here. These stones to praise thee may not cease. Like, there's infinite. And it's really interesting that it's coming from a Christian devotional background, and there's so much like the allegory connects also with our sort of, well, the poetry and du'as or supplications we have in the Muslim world as well.
Yes, and I think it's beautiful how universal poetry is and continues to be. No matter the subject matter, it can always get to the heart of us, which I think is like a really beautiful, powerful thing. So we're going to move on. I don't know why my view of my slideshow has changed, but I'm actually going to leave it like this because I think it'll be helpful for clicking on the next few links. So that is our example of British devotional poetry. Unfortunately, we're jumping. We have to move on to our next category. But think about that. Think about the facts that I told you about British devotional poetry. And if there was a line that really resonated with you from that poem, please definitely write it down. My screen is just not doing the thing. Okay. All right. Now we're going to get into some African American worship traditions. Obviously, this is the one I have the most background information in, so I might go on a tangent. Feel free to raise your hand and be like, Sasa, you're talking a lot. But this is a subject matter that I really enjoyed talking about. So when we get to worship traditions in the African American culture, you come up to, there are plenty, just as in every culture, there are plenty, but the two main that I would like to focus on today are Negro spirituals and gospel music. Now, this is a distinction that I've created, but truly Negro spirituals are the foundation of gospel music and they kind of flow into each other. But because of the poem that I wrote that I think maybe not all, but many of you have heard, I decided to distinguish them just so we can talk about ways that they're different. And then talk about how they can be applied. So a Negro spiritual is a religious song of a kind associated with Black Christians of the South and thought to derive from a combination of European hymns and African musical elements that were brought by enslaved Africans. That says Black slaves. I meant to change that because that is not terminology that we use. They were enslaved. They were not slaves. But anyways, and so a very, very famous Negro spiritual would be Wade in the Water. And these are, I wrote by the ancestors because these are songs, these are poems that we actually don't know the origin of. They have been passed on for generations and you kind of just know them. But the original writers, because of things like, enslaved people not being allowed to read and write, enslaved people not being given credit for the work that they did, the original writers of these songs are not known. And so this specific song is also one that is constantly changing, constantly evolving. So we all know Wade in the Water and that choral portion. But the verses in between are they change out depending on who's singing them. And this is the nature of a lot of African-American religious poetic worship traditions. They are in flux constantly. And it's part of the nature of the work, and it's also a challenge for learning and participating in that work. So can I get someone to read out just like the first 3 stanzas? Actually, we can do this entire section from here down to here. If the ads want to stop popping up. No volunteers? Do I need to call on somebody? Michonne. Thank you very much.
Okay. Wade in the water, wade in the water, wade in the water. Children, God is going to trouble these waters. See that band all dressed in white? God's going to trouble these waters. It looks like a band of Israelites. God is going to trouble these waters. See that band all dressed in red? It went off. I can't see the words anymore.
Oh
I'm
no,
sorry. Okay.
no worries.
See that band all dressed in red? God is going to trouble these waters. Look like a band. Look like a band that Moses led. God is going to trouble these waters. My Lord delivered Daniel well. Daniel well. Daniel well. Didn't my Lord deliver Daniel well? Then why not eat? Why not every man?
Beautiful. Thank you so much for reading that out for all of us. So in this poem, you can see, in this song, you can see common themes that are found in gospel music in general, and then also specifically in Negro spirituals. It's characterized by themes of glad tidings, so good news, being saved, and praising God for freedom. And so I think it's pretty obvious why these are themes that are present in African-American worship traditions, because a lot of enslaved people turned to religion and turned to faith as a way to survive the violence that they were subjected to every day. And so you see lines like, my Lord delivered Daniel well, why not every man? And you have, looks like the band that Moses led, because as I've mentioned in past conversations with Poets of the Household, this idea of Moses and the Israelites being saved from enslavement was one that resonated very deeply. And so these are common themes that you'll see in Negro spirituals. Now, again, my screen is just, this is like you have Mac for 4 years and it starts doing stuff like this. It's craziness. Okay, I think we're settled. Is my screen making sense to you all?
I think it's black for us right now. It's like a blank screen.
No. That's so strange. It's not black for me.
Okay, there. I think I saw it like as soon as you like closed it, that we were able to see it. But
How tragic. Okay. I am going to actually give my computer a second to chill out, because it is sizzling like it's trying to cook an egg. And in the meantime, I'll just copy the link for my presentation from this next poem that we're going to look at.
And if you want, Sasa, I could open the presentation and share the screen as well, if that helps.
I think that'd be wonderful, actually. If I can get my computer to do what I need it to do. In the meantime, can anyone share anything that resonated with them from this song?
I think like the fact that you mentioned, you know, like drawing the comparison of Moses and the Israelites being saved from enslavement. I think like a lot of spiritual poetry or religious poetry ends up comparing ourselves and our situation with events of the past, characters of the past, people from, you know, religious books and stories, and trying to ground ourselves in their experiences and comparing those and struggles. So yeah, that was one thing that I think that was we're very well done with this one.
Anybody else have thoughts?
Yeah, I really like how it uses the imagery of the Israelites and Moses. It doesn't use a lot of words, but still, when you're reading it and listening to it, the whole scene comes to mind. And so it's not using words, but still describing a lot more than it is.
Yes, and I love that you mentioned that it doesn't use a lot of words. These spirituals tend to be very concise and rely mostly on repetition as opposed to new words. And so the repetition is what is giving emphasis, it's what's showing the emotion, and the words are very sparse. So that's actually very characteristic of this form of poetry. Thank you so much for noticing that. Okay, I think my computer is like kind of back to normal. So we're gonna dive right back in. Can you actually, yeah, okay, we're gonna talk about gospel music and then we're gonna click the link. So gospel music, as I mentioned, is kind of like the child of Negro spirituals, but we're going to talk about it as a separate thing. So it's a genre of Protestant Christian music rooted in the religious revivals of the 19th century, which developed in different directions within the white and Black American communities. But one thing that I think is interesting is that modern gospel music and the music that's listened to, the genre itself, the things that are sung in churches is typically very Black and is credited to African American movers and shakers in that genre. And so there is a racial distinction because this is America and there's a racial distinction in everything. But the genre itself is pretty unanimously agreed to be a Black genre. So, Nahi, if you could click on the link. Can you guys all hear me, by the way? Like, am I breaking up at all? Because okay, great.
No, we could hear you.
And so, wonderful. And so again, this song, and also Wade in the Water, both were credited to different artists. But that just means it's this artist's rendition. Both of these are also, the creators are not known. Because they're old. So can I have a volunteer to read the first 3 stanzas, the intro, the verse, and the chorus? I will call on people because my mother is a teacher and I reserve the right.
I could
before...
I could take a stab. So the first 4?
Okay. Yes, the first 3.
3, okay. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. Now when Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. So the Lord said, go down, Moses, Moses, way, way down, down in Egypt land. Tell old pharaohs to let my people go.
Beautiful. So thank you very much for sharing. Again, this is a very repetitive poem song. And these all have melodies. So if you are okay with listening to music, you can go ahead and explore these on your own. Or, we can listen to it now. That's cool too. But again, this is the same type, and actually this song in itself is old that it might also be so old that it could be considered a Negro spiritual. But again, the distinction isn't really necessary. But anyways, does anybody have thoughts or observations about this?
I think the repetition is very powerful, and especially like if it's sung. I've heard this before. I think it kind of drives that message more deeper, and draws that comparison, to Moses saying this to the Pharaoh and standing up to the Pharaoh, and it draws a lot of there's a lot of inspiration that gets derived from this, the repetition and like just the imagery of the Moses standing before the Pharaoh.
Does anyone else have thoughts? Thank you for sharing, by the way.
I think it's interesting. There's a greater like quantity of imperatives in this piece versus the other devotional poetry that we started off with, and I think perhaps because of the fact of like the context of it being much, I guess, something that is perhaps less about purely love, but also about hope and resilience. The idea of letting them go, telling them this. So I thought that's quite an interesting separation, because I almost feel this is more empowering, whilst the other is more like the other meaning, like the British style is much more like about soft language, love, that kind of thing.
Very cool. Thank you. Great insights. Exactly. The context of the people writing these poems has a huge impact on what the subject matter is about. So exactly, one is about exalting the creator and loving the creator and almost like lowering yourself in front of the creator, whereas this is more about finding hope in the creator, empowering yourself through the creator, and believing in yourself as worthy of human dignity because you were created by the one all-powerful. Yeah, we can go back to the presentation now. And generally a very interesting fixtures of just general Black worship traditions. And I also forgot to mention that although these traditions are very much based in Christianity, Black Muslims such as myself are also very much connected to this history because it's so recent for many of us. And so this is what I would call a cultural worship tradition that actually transcends faith, because it's based in a faith, but is felt and understood by all members of this racial group. So we can move on. So this next one is what I have like the briefest language on, because I assumed that we all knew, but I'm going to give some background for anyone who doesn't. So Shia traditions of lamentation and remembrance. So lamentation and remembrance is a term that I use as part of Remembrance in Verse, which is the page and initiative that I'm working on, but that's a whole other thing. But this is defined as the specific term for the poetic and lyrical commemoration of the events of Karbala, the Ahlul Bayt, their companions, etc. And so this is traditionally done through poetry, elegies, and storytelling. And I think the storytelling piece is really interesting because storytelling is a word I'm using for Masaib, which is the part of any Shia gathering where the speaker is sharing like event by event of what happened on this specific day, on this historical event. And again, for background, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. The events of Karbala is a historical event that took place where the grandson of the prophet was killed, and his family was killed in a very violent way. And so that's something that we as Shia Muslims focus on and think about a lot. And then the Ahlul Bayt, again, it's just the word for the family of the prophet. So that's the background information. But we have very, very specific, very, very old traditions of remembering these events that start immediately after the event took place. And so we all know, and I should have included here, but I actually forgot to, the speech that the sister of Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet, gave to Yazid, the ruler of the time, about the events and about what he had done and about how horrible of a human being he was, because he was. And that, I think, I would call the first instance of people recounting and recalling the events of this day in a linguistic and poetic form. And so we know that every year for the next forever, the family of the Ahlul Bayt, the family of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt and the Imams and everyone who came after, really focused on retelling these events and remembering the events. We know about Arba'in that took place 40 days after the event took place, and recalling the people who were lost in that moment. And we know about the tradition of our Imams commissioning poets to talk about what had taken place, to write about it beautifully and to recite it both with a melodic, in a melodic form and then also not. And so I didn't include any examples of that because I assumed we all had background knowledge, and I'm so sorry for those who don't. But what I did include was a bunch of samples of some contemporary work that people are doing in English, because again, we know that all those traditions that I mentioned before were happening in Arabic. And so these are traditions, these are works that are happening in English about these events and about these people. And so we're only going to go through a couple, and then I want to share the link to this presentation. So hopefully everybody can go through these samples, but just look at some poetry that people are writing and sharing about these events. So I actually haven't decided which ones we're going to look at. Does anybody have a preference? It's okay if you don't, I'll just make something up myself. Okay. In that case, I think we are going to start with a eulogy for Muhammad and Own. If you can click, thank you. And we're just going to listen to a bit of this, but this is a
mother paces alone at night. Her thirsty children catch her eye. She looks upon them with a smile and then sits with them for a while. On and Muhammad, take my hand and promise me that you'll stand if I'm Zahra in this land. You are my Hassan and Hussein. Take your swords and look at me. Tomorrow.
Okay, we can pause right there. So that is just a beautiful elegy that was written in English by some brothers in Atlanta. And so just one example of the way people are exploring and thinking about these elegies in English from an American Shia perspective. If we can go back to the slideshow and we can just click on River Tears, because why not? I think that's the easiest example of how worship traditions are being combined with more modern expressions of Shia faith.
Water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble these waters.
The loyal brother of our Imam goes to bring water for the children. He too is thirsty, body weakened, but he fights like a lion. His standard does not waver as he cuts his path. Arms, legs, and spirit steady, fighting only for the cause of Allah, fighting for his family.
Wade in the water.
Okay, and we can pause that because I hate listening to myself. And then I think we can do Hussein Husseina by Ali Abbas.
Ya Hussein, Husseina, Hussein, Husseina, Hussein, Husseina, Ya Hussein, Hussein, Husseina, Hussein, Husseina, Hussein, Husseina, Ya Hussein. Allahu Akbar, this is the call of علي أكبر for الصلاة علي أكبر for الصلاة. You be the witness, he has the surah, he has the seerah of Mustafa.
Okay, and we can stop that there. Beautiful. So it occurred to me just now that I went through those super quick. But does anybody have thoughts, or was anyone able to catch a line or anything that resonated with them? We can also backtrack if not, so just let me know.
I guess one thing that I noticed was like and more than the poetry, sometimes it's also about the tune, and like where that tune is coming from. Like for example, the first two that we listened to, it seemed like more native to, you know, a North American tradition. Um, whereas like the last one was more, it sounded more like an Eastern tune, kind of maybe fit into something that might have existed before, kind of thing. But yeah, just one thing I noticed about like the way the melody on which is recited as well.
Yeah, and I love that distinction because we often think that words are just what words are the only thing that can be specific to, you know, a language, and that anything else can be translated without concern. But it's very true that the melodies, the meter, the breakdown, the syllabic breakdown, like every part of these poetic and lyrical compositions are actually very specific to the language that they're created in. So exactly, Brother Ali Abbas, who is local to the DMV, he writes in English and it's beautiful. And he also pulls from his very specific South Asian, Pakistani, like lyrical and melodic norms as he's creating his work. So it's very cool to hear the difference. Does anybody else have thoughts?
I was just thinking that, so the River Tears piece that you'd written, that was the only one of these that I've heard before, and it's actually very very different to the English pieces that we write in Britain, especially to melody. The styles that I've heard here are ones that I've probably not heard before at all, and yes, it's very interesting to hear that, because the influence of like the American tunes and the American like kind of devotional poetry is yeah, that's very new, so it was quite exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
It was also
Anybody else?
interesting.
Yes.
It was also interesting. The first one, like everyone said, it sounds very American, but at the same time, when each line ends, the other person kind of repeats the main reciter, and I feel like that is a tradition taken from Marcia, which where like there's these people at the back kind of like harmonizing with the main singer. And when people are reciting Urdu poetry during majalis, so that was very interesting. But also, it's interesting how rhythm kind of makes the language sound different as well. The third one, I almost didn't realize it was English for a second, and then I realized it was. So that was also very interesting.
Yeah. On your first point, I think that's interesting that you say that that's a very like Marcia, you know, like Desi South Asian tradition, because I would also consider that a very like North American, like US tradition. And so I also think it's important to point out how much things intersect and overlap. Like
Yeah.
we are very unique, but also in a lot of ways we're not. And we connect on all of these very like just universal, like human levels. And so I think it's both. And I think that's something else that we can learn from as we're joining this canon, writing this work. We are unique, but also like not really. And so we can rest assured in the fact that our work is normal and also beautiful and special.
Yeah.
But generally not that deep.
No, I think all of these are really beautiful pieces, and they all have their own like sort of place. And I think what's interesting is where they're pulling from, the heritages that they're trying to lean in on. And the key thing for me is remembrance or mourning is again the whole idea of reimagining and imagining. And that's what community is as well. Like, so communal remembrance is heavily reliant upon the imagining that we present, and poets are the key part of mourning, right? As in, like, that's why
Hmm.
it was imperative for the gatherings. I always say this, like, English lamentations have like they've predated even the advent of like us doing like poetry, or the poets of the household, or like even some of the ones that we know. And if we open ourselves up to that literature, I think we've got a lot of like lamentation which we can also pull from. One which comes to
Hmm.
mind, I always use this example, is Sunshine at Midnight. And it's a beautiful poem which was written in, like, it's basically a one long poem which runs throughout, and it talks about the tragedy of Karbala in it's written in meter, and it was written in colonial India in English. So, like, there are so many things which we can also pull from, and it's interesting because the reason why I use that as an anomaly is that that was sitting situated in India, didn't pull on the South Asian tradition of how poetry should be presented. It may have pulled on some of the sensitivities or the points of like, for example, Al Muhammad is eulogized in South Asian traditions, not necessarily Arab traditions as much. So the certain
Hmm.
characters are pulled, but it was written almost like a, if you treat it that way, iambic pentameter it has quite strong parts of it too. So it's interesting, and I think that's what the challenge is. Like, can we truly say that there is a canon of work which is going to be defined as Western poetry of lamentation? I don't know. Maybe the right way is the English expression of remembrance. But yeah, not to go philosophical, but yeah, that's what happens when you've
Well, I mean,
hard time.
no, but yes, like that that is the thesis, that is the point. The canon that I'm referring to is something that I think is like growing and evolving and changing with the work that we do on a daily basis. It's changing with what you write on your page, and then it's changing with what you decide to erase. What we're doing is we're participating in something that is constantly evolving, but also is old, and it's not new. And we're inventing, but we're also pulling from things that were done before. And so I think yes to everything you said, and kind of like that's the whole point of this workshop at the end, like goodbye. It is about like, okay, if we're working in this English language, what do we know that exists already, and then what can we pull from, and what can we make that's new? Who were we before, who are we now? All the questions, all the things. Thank you for contributing that. Your pre-iftar thoughts are still clear. Rest assured. Um, but that's exactly the point. And I wanted to backtrack. Oh, I forgot to mention, yes, the characteristics, the things that typically define lamentation and remembrance in the Shia faith is mourning, themes of loss, things of remembering, and memorializing specifically people who have come before, specific important people. So I wanted to put that out there just for the background info. Does anyone have any last thoughts before we move on?
On lamentation, one thing I'd say is that in sort of contemporary times, like, you can also look at there's a whole like academic study of like poetry in sort of resistance as well. And we've seen this especially like Iran-Iraq War, Bulbul Khomeini, like, poetry was used as a means to inspire people towards a greater cause, interlinking with some of the things that we looked at, from the previous body of work you were showing. And so today as well, like, I think that's a really interesting thing, which I find English lends itself very nicely to. Like, people have tried it with Urdu and Farsi, but I just think it slaps in English better than any other language. Because when you're talking about like revolution and resistance, or like standing against injustice, how that's interconnected, that timelessness is also really interesting. So that's something which I was just gonna say, um, which would be interesting as well,
Yeah.
because we talk about mourning, but then what about like situating it in the time that it is currently? And I think there's a lot of people that are trying to do that work, and I really enjoy reading these pieces.
Sorry, I also just wanted to add to that. I think if I look at the three pieces that we hear, and because we were talking about how melody also like changes the way that we're viewing it. So for the first two, I would say that it does that tone that it carries, it kind of it is sad, but it also makes you uncomfortable in a very different way. Like your third piece was very like it's very soft and soulful. It makes you feel very sad. But the first two, I feel like like what we're talking about, the revolution, like just the rising up, like I think it ties that in very well. And I think that could also be because of the genre that it belongs to, and the context of like we were talking about it. So I think that's one thing. It's more like a rajas, like it's like Raj instead of just the other, just like a Noha.
Yes, thank you for contributing that. I also think it's interesting to think about, like, I wouldn't myself have called either of those first two like any kind of like protest or revolutionary. But I think it's interesting though the different way that work is received based off the context, again, of the person who's hearing it, not even of the person who's writing it. So thank you for contributing that. Would not have thought of that on my own. So I think we are ready to go to our next slide and our next part. So we're going to shift gears a little bit. And we are going to go back to that sample line that I was telling you all to, or that one line that resonates with you that I was telling you all to pull from the sample poems. So I hope we all did it. Was everyone able to? If you were, just raise your hand so I can see. And then if not, we can backtrack a little bit. Yes. Thank you, Mishan.
Did I
Nobody else
post
was
like
able
the
to get
link?
there.
Should I
Yeah,
put the
so
post the links of the of some of the
okay.
pieces? Do you think that would help?
Yes,
I'm
that
just
would help.
getting my iftar, so
May Allah accept your fast. Taqabbalallah.
Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna just in the chat, I'll post like all the different links that were in the presentation.
Beautiful. In the meantime, Mishan, can you share what line you pulled?
Yes, I pulled from the altar and it says, made of a heart and cemented with tears.
Beautiful. Thank you. Zain, when you get a chance, we'd love to hear your line as well. No rush though.
yeah. Somebody else go before me. Am I the last
Yeah,
one?
yeah. No rush,
Oh.
no rush. We only a couple people were able to pull, so no rush. I know you're getting your iftar ready. I wasn't even looking for my favorite line, which is crazy.
So mine,
But
you
I
hear me? Oh, can you hear
yes.
me? Oh yeah, so mine is whose parts are as thy hands did frame. Because it's this idea of, for me, it's like the acknowledgement of like that God is the creator and human beings themselves, like this part of the poem is like the human himself is the divine altar. So yeah, that's how I read that.
Beautiful. I'm gonna give everyone else like a minute or two to pick out their favorite line. I think for me, what I would say is, my Lord delivered Daniel well, why not every man? That's just something that sticks with me all the time.
Yeah, it's a powerful use of like rhetoric as well, right? So
yeah.
I've got a line from the altar. Sorry, I thought hands up or if you didn't have a line. He says, "A heart alone is such a stone." I think that's quite cool. It's a nice image to kind of, yeah, I like the kind of almost the anti-anthropology side of that, which is quite nice.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
And also, I think that's a idea that I can actually be led into. There were some other lines that were quite nice, but I felt like for that to be like the beginning of a piece might be challenging. But I think that in itself is quite an interesting concept.
Beautiful. Okay, Our other three participants, you guys don't necessarily have to share, but we're gonna move on to the next part. So one thing that I do when I teach poetry is that I give very bare bones instructions. I am very free flow, and I let people kind of fill in wherever they'd like. For most people that works, and then for some people it really, really doesn't. So I'm gonna give you my prompt in the way that I would, just very bare bones, normal. And then if you feel like you need some more like instruction or feedback, I'll fill that in as we go. Can we share the screen again? Just so everybody can see it. And for Sean, I think we're gonna edit this for you because again, it's from specifically the prompt is from the Shia Muslim perspective. And so we're gonna tweak it just a touch. So the prompt here is take the line from the sample poem that resonates with you most and use that as the first line of your poem about the Ahlul Bayt. And so, Mashan, for you, I would say the first line of your poem about devotion, just your devotional poem. And repeat the line at least twice in your poem. So it can be it has to be the very first line, and then it can go anywhere in the middle and the end, wherever you'd like it to go. Does that make sense to everyone? I'll take just a thumbs up or like a yep.
Yep.
Cool. Wonderful. All right. If anyone has any questions, you can let me know. Feel free to unmute or just put it in the chat. But I want to leave you with that for like 15 minutes and we can write. And that's it. Beautiful. Can we put on more background music?
Just please not Mahir Zain. Idea that was, but Nucky, if it was yours, yeah, we need to have serious words. It was yours, right?
Of course, it was mine.
I've been in too many,
This is
I've been in too many car journeys with Nucky to know that was his playlist.
I'm dead.
All right,
The
I'll put
slander.
I'm gonna put some
And
focus
says that
music.
Mahir Zain is going to be played in Muslim purgatory, because we don't know if
I'm
it's
dead.
if the song is going to be played in heaven or hell.
Yeah, just to let you know,
You
Zain,
know,
this
me
call is being
personally.
recorded, so
Oh, is it?
we
can
probably
cut
cut
out
that
that
part
part.
out, guys.
Yeah, please cut that part. The revolution part too. Oh.
Sasa, Naki, I'm so sorry. After my apologies. I think I might need to head out now.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, no worries, no
I
worries.
would
Thank you for joining.
no worries, thank you. I'd love to do the task, so inshallah I'll do that. And if there's a space to share later on everyone's pieces, I'd love to read what people have as well.
Yeah, for sure.
That'd be
Thank you
wonderful.
so
We can
much.
see about getting that together.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Does everybody feel like they're well equipped to get started? Thumbs up emoji, heart emoji. Great. Great. All right, I'm gonna take that as a yes from everyone else. We can write until 2:30 and then we can share out.
Hey everyone, I'm gonna drop off because I reached my destination, but I'm gonna take this prompt and definitely gonna continue working on it because it's really interesting. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Sasa.
so much.
Thank you,
Of
Asad.
course. Thank you for being with us. So we have 2 minutes left before we share and log off. Does that sound like a reasonable amount of time for everyone? I will take a thumbs up emoji.
Maybe like a few more minutes, but yeah, but it should be okay.
5 more? Does that sound better? More reasonable?
Let's do 2. 2, 3.
Oh, was that?
Yeah, 2 or 3 is fine.
Okay.
Mine's gonna be like a page poem. So I just send that over to you.
Were you
You're
saying
breaking
something?
up a lot on my end.
Oh,
Can you
can you
type?
hear me okay now?
Yeah. I think it was probably the background music.
Oh, mine is my poem's gonna be a page poem. So do you want me to send it to you, Nucky?
I think if you want, you could put it on the chat and read it out. I mean that works too, right?
Yeah, you can definitely just read it out. Having it for later would be great, but that's right now you can just focus on reading it. Okay, I'm going to stop us here, and if we can stop the screen share too, so we can all look at each other. Ah, those who remain. All right. I hope we're all feeling like we were able to do something. I say that as someone who doesn't feel like I was able to do much, but it's fine. Does anybody feel moved to share first? Yes, Michonne.
Can't. It's short, but still I think I did pretty good. Alrighty. So I did made of a heart and cemented with tears. I come to you tattered, weary, and depleted. Shower me with your grace and mercy. Nourish my spirit with your love. Sculpt me in your image again, made of a heart and cemented with tears.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Really beautiful.
Wow. I think that
Can
was a beautiful place to take that. Yeah, go ahead, Zane.
I was gonna ask you like what was your thought process because I interpret it in a different way, but I'd love to know your process because it was very, very beautiful.
So I come from a Christian background. So I don't know, just that line just made me think of a lot of stuff, like just from going to, Bible studies and things, and reading things out of the Bible specifically to just, kind of like this rebirth of like Christ, and kind of a lot of things about like his body, especially like taking communion. I don't know if is anything in your religion that's very similar, but it was, that was his blood and bones. So I don't know, that line just kind of made me think of all of that. And so kind of just pulling from those like elements of growing up. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing and being
One thing I saw as a reflection just from listening, and I didn't, as you've mentioned, by the way, I went to a Catholic school for like majority. I think a lot of my writing's inspired by Catholicism as well. But there was a really interesting point about sculpted as well, and this idea that, we're made in the image of God. And the sculpted part was really interesting because it took me to like almost like a primordial point of creation where God sculpting clay. And from the Islamic tradition, we have like breathing his breath, and the breath is essentially the soul, the heart of existence. So I found that to be, whilst you wrote that from a Christian perspective, there was a lot of resonance, and that's the beauty, I think, of devotional poetry.
And us too, a lot of talk, about being made in his image and all of that, especially growing up. So and I thought of those things too. And like thinking about just anything with water and dirt and stuff will make clay, and you mold that, you create that. That's a medium that I also like as far as like art goes too. So and you can make things anew.
Yes.
And you talked about that earlier, like just this rebirth and making things anew. So yes, like you said, all of those elements are tied into it, and I'm glad that it does resonate with other cultures and faith bases too.
I wanted to say thank you so much for participating and bringing your perspective into the space. I don't know if this is what you were expecting from this workshop, but just you being here and being a willing participant and then sharing your beautiful work is truly a blessing, and you're adding so much. So thank you. Anyone else want to share? Zane, you're unmuted.
Okay. So although my favorite line was the other one, I chose another line from the poem. And the line was, "Oh, let thy blessed sacrifice be mine." For those
Very
that are
Shia.
my Shia background. So I'll read the poem and then I'll send it because it's more of a page poem. "Oh, let thy blessed sacrifice be mine, as though he stood the lamb in cradled embrace, his shoulders crescent moons, eclipsed at the blade's ascent. Abraham's dagger here is stuck in suspense. Spare thy child, let my neck bear the burden, and through cracked lips parting, his own eulogy unfurls. Oh, let thy blessed sacrifice be mine."
Beautiful poem.
I'm not sure much needs to be said. That was a beautiful poem.
It was, I think the music was bringing me back to this idea of transcendence as well. And the way that I'm seeing it as well is like you can see that in many ways, right? But the idea of the great sacrifice or the greatest of sacrifice. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Namaya, would you like to share?
I actually would want to apologize because I'm currently in the midst of a writer's block. It's been ongoing for quite a while, but I'm gonna try and work on this and try and send it in later, if that's okay with everyone.
First thing, please do not apologize. You have nothing to be sorry for. I hope that this was helpful in inching you maybe a little bit further out of that writer's block. And also, if you have a favorite line, would you be able to just share that, like what line you were thinking of using?
Yeah, so basically my line was the same one as Zen's. And again, the idea was pretty much around that only, but haven't really gotten far with that. But inshallah, I'll try and work on that and send it in later.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. I totally understand. Our last participant, aka organizer.
Yeah, I kind of just like quickly did this. I spent most of my time going into, so the line I chose was God's gonna trouble these waters, and I just wanted to know the full context behind that. So the poem is kind of like a little bit, quick, but here's what it is. Whose hands holds these waters? Hur with his quenched lips stares at empty, dry drinking bowls, thirsty children laying upon Karbala's burning plains. God's gonna trouble these waters. Who am I and who are these purified souls satisfied with thirst? This hurricane within my chest, where does my heart flow? God's gonna trouble these waters. Hur parts the seas of indecision. Moses leads his fate toward salvation. God's gonna trouble these waters.
It was a beautiful poem.
Wow.
Truly, I'm not sure what you meant by saying it's a bit all over the place or whatever you said. Wow, thank you all so much for writing and contributing. And if you would like these poems to be posted on a very small Instagram page that is hoping to have a lot more followers soon, please send them to me. But truly beautiful poetry. Thank you all so much for sharing and participating. I wrote a poem that doesn't make a lot of sense. I can share it if you want to hear it, but it's like it really doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't necessarily
No, we want to
follow
hear it. We
my
want to hear it.
okay. Didn't my Lord deliver Daniel well? Why not every man? I wade in the waters of memory, doing my best to step firmly, no tripping, no falling on these tired knees, thirsty yet refusing to sip, knowing my Imam died thirsty, and my ancestors drowned. My Lord delivered Daniel well and did not deliver Hussein, instead brought him home. My Lord delivered Daniel well and brought my ancestors home. My Lord delivered Daniel well. Why not every man?
Wow.
Not, I have to go back to it.
No,
Yeah.
I think that's a complete poem there.
Yeah, I really like that.
Beautiful pieces today.
I definitely didn't know that you were gonna take it where you were gonna take it when you were started off. So it was a nice surprise.
I didn't either, so it was a surprise for me too. Well, that brings us to the end. We are done writing together, learning together. Thank you so much for being here with us, writing, learning, spending this is the second week of Ramadan together. So that's really nice. On the slideshow, I don't think we need to reshare it, but on the slideshow, I had some sources. So if you're interested, they're there. It's like 2 links, it's not much. And then I also have my website and IG, which if you want to stay in touch, that's how you can get at me. But I think everyone here might already follow that. So I really appreciate you guys for being here, contributing all that you had, and really creating some beautiful work. So thank you. I hope it was beneficial. I hope it was worth missing your iftar, Brother Zane.
It was really good.
Inshallah.
I have a question for you. Like in terms of
Oh,
your practice, this is a good time to ask it, I guess, if we've got time. But I just wanted to know, like, how do you go about with your piece or with your process? Like maybe sharing a bit about how you go into devotional poetry from your own personal perspective.
I think my approach is, I would venture to say that my approach is very different than a lot of other poets working in this like devotional Shia poetry specifically genre, because I was trained for so long in a very secular space. I typically come at work from a very like self-centered way that's very specific to my perspective, which I don't think is always bad, but that's just the way that I've been moving for a long time. And so what I tend to do is that I look for a a history, like someone's specific life or a specific event, from Ashura, Ahlul Bayt, like Muharram, all of that on a broad scheme. And I try to think about what resonates with me and how I connect. And I think that's what's taken me down this path of really connecting my Black identity so much with my Shia identity, which, I mean, they're intertwined in me as a person anyway, but because as a starting point, I often use myself, I come to these places of connecting the dots very explicitly in my work. And it's interesting because I was told, what, maybe 3 years ago now, by one of the uncles in my community that my poems need to be sadder. Because for a long time they were mostly about recounting events and like the invigoration and the inspiration that I feel from these events, but weren't often about like tragedy and mourning. And so I think even though like my secular training kind of shies away from that, because I think often, especially in the youth poetry scene here in the US, we don't really want to always talk about lamentation and truly taking time to mourn. But I think that's something that I've been going into more recently. And so still trying to combine my personal perspective with this idea that actually having a sad poem serves a very specific function in our faith and our belief framework. And we to be able to move someone to tears in the way of the Ahlul Bayt is also like a blessing and a barakah for me as the poet. And so recognizing that and combining it with the approach that I'm more comfortable with, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then also very much thinking about tying in like Negro spirituals and, worship traditions from my culture, that kind of thing.
And how do you balance that from being your own poet to also being inspired by your heritage and the literary heritage that you ascribe yourself from? And like, how do you balance it in terms of like, I think this is one of the challenges that I think overall, it doesn't matter which background you come from. Like, I think sort of second generation or third generation South Asians come from Indo-Pak, or like, if you're trying to write a new piece, how do you try and make sure that it's not just being constrained to that? Because you said you're inspired by how it's always an interesting challenge I have for myself as well.
I think for me, I'm somewhat lucky in that the specific way that I'm applying these things has not been seen very much. And so of course it's been done because everything's been done. But it hasn't been seen very much. And so I often don't feel like I'm mimicking or like, just making the same. But I also very much believe that I guess it's not a kind of pressure that I feel or that I push on myself, I think is the short answer. Because I believe, one, that I belong to my people, and so anything that I make is from them and is for them, and therefore it doesn't need to be very different, because I only get to exist because of the grit and the work and the tears and the sweat and the love and the trust of others. And so if what I make is just like them, I walk around, a lot of people, you guys don't know this, but I walk around, I have my mother's face. Like people see me and say, "Oh, are you your mother's daughter?" Because I literally wear her on my face. And so I'm very aware of the fact that I belong to where I come from. And so I'm very comfortable with my work also being a copy and paste of something else, if it were. But I don't believe that it is, because I also believe that in our sameness, we're also unique. And so I guess I don't worry about it.
Yeah. No. I can talk about this all day long, but I find it really interesting when I hear different perspectives, and I really appreciate today, because I wouldn't have taken this as serious in terms of like devotional side of poetry. Like, it's a very personal thing, but to explore other works as well from different cultures, I think it's also a really good way to set forward for the next few months of writing too. Yeah. Final question I had for everyone, if that's all right. It's just when you're writing devotional poems, I went to there was a Christian writing poetry workshop a few years ago here in the church where I'm from in Peterborough. And what was really interesting is somebody said that the poet that was facilitating, I can't to remember her name. She was saying that when she writes poetry, she feels as though the Holy Spirit like embodied, like she's filled with divine inspiration essentially, and the poem sort of writes itself. And I just wanted to know, like, if anyone else has felt that way, where like sometimes you feel like this poem is not coming from you individually, it's coming from a greater purpose when you write for a greater purpose. Like grace sort of dictates that. But I don't know if anyone else has got thoughts on that. I know we have that like Islamic tradition, but
I do on occasion feel that way, but I often hesitate to say so because I feel like it's who am I? You know, like I feel like how could I say where this is coming from? But sometimes I do. I feel like a poem is just like born on its own and I have very little to do with it.
beautiful. Nucky, what about you? See, you were nodding.
No, yeah, I agree. Like I think similar to Sasa, like sometimes it feels like the inspiration is coming from, I don't know where it came from, but it just comes on completed on paper kind of in a way, right? And you look at it and you're like, I possibly could not have done this. I don't have the skills. I don't have the talent or creativity to be able to come up with this on my own. And then you look at it and you're impressed yourself, right? And I think those are the moments where you're like, is this like some coming from somewhere else kind of thing?
What about you, Michelle?
Yeah, I definitely do. I probably had an experience like that a few weeks ago. Like they come and go. It's not like it happens on a regular basis. Sometimes I feel like I can curate like spaces to get into that kind of mindset, but sometimes it just comes on. The kind of the episode like a couple of weeks ago was definitely one of those moments where it feels like something else is kind of taking over like my mind and pen, and some good things just are created in that.
Yeah, Amir Sulaiman, who is Sufi, I think. Sufi is a type of Muslim that's very concerned with like the spiritual practice of connecting with God. And anyways, Amir Sulaiman, I was speaking to him back in November and asking him like about his work, and he was saying that a large part of his poetic practice is about trying to access that space where he feels like it's coming from Allah or it's coming from somewhere else. And of course, like very spiritual because he's Sufi. And so like he spends all this time doing dhikr, which is like remembering God with his different names. He spends all this time reading Quran and doing all this stuff because he knows that he creates his best work when he's in the state where he feels connected. So he tries to create the state more than he even tries to write, which I think I was like, oh, that's crazy. But when you see him, I don't know if you guys have ever met him, but he's always carrying dhikr beads, prayer beads all the time.
When he
and I just
performs,
thought that was
they're around his wrist when he performs as well.
exactly. Like he never does not have them. I've never seen him without them. And so I also think that's very interesting. Like, how do I tap into this space? I also feel like the Christian concept of the Holy Spirit is very accessible. But I feel like in Islam, it gets because we don't have that concept of like something else that we could be channeling aside from like Allah. I feel like it can get dangerous to say that, oh, like I'm trying to channel God, like all the time. Like I feel like we can sometimes get too caught up in our own egos or get too I don't know, invested in something that maybe isn't as divine as we think, and then end up maybe
I
not.
guess it's interesting because this is like a huge battle because like what I don't know, how would you translate Naki Atta?
Inspiration, I guess you could say, or like
Namaya.
revelation, right? Technically revelation, right?
So like it's interesting because like I never used to see it this way either, but my uncle was saying that, when you write poems or whatever, he says that there's a khas adat, like so it's a yeah, you could say inspiration or whatever. But it was an interesting point because that made me really think about like the power of the ability to craft or create, and that's one of the manifestation, or like one of the names of God, right? Or one of the attributes of God, that he is a creator. So you birth a piece of art into its existence, and if it is connected, I think sometimes there's like sacred time and sacred space, and just into when that connects as well, it's a really powerful thing. but yeah, I can. I'm really really interested in what you were saying about curating certain spaces or ensuring like you have the right environment as well. Um, this part is not being recorded, right? Like as in we.
We'll probably just cut it out after the
I can stop the recording.
yeah.
Should I stop the recording now?
You could stop
No,
it, but we could also just cut it off too, like when before you post it.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I agree with the curated part too, because even you mentioned previously about the music, the background music that had playing, that how that inspired you to be in a certain state, and oftentimes like that environment definitely lends itself to certain types of emotions that you can draw out more effectively or better.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think just for the translation of Ada, I don't think it's inspiration. I don't know what the word would be because what all of you are saying, I think it's easier to even talk about it in the way that like the Ahl Bayt is making you a vessel for something that you need to create, because I think for just like the past like a couple of months, because of going through that block, and I think the guilt also comes with it because you start thinking of, oh, maybe did I do something wrong, why it's not happening anymore. Because genuinely, I think when you're looking back at a lot of pieces that you've written, you're just like, no, that's not me. Because you're just like, it's very hard to figure out, okay, oh, could I have written that at any point? Be it for metaphors, be it for the message that comes out at the end of it, and then you truly, and I think that's why, like, not just like even for a lot of like shuhada stories and the martyr stories, you think about when you think about it, like they talk about them and like the aspect of sincerity in it quite a bit. So like I don't know if you guys have heard the story about this martyr who was like writing a Quran and everything, and he was like writing it himself. And he basically, and I think this is Shahid Ahmad Nayari, and he wrote it, and everybody like started like talking about it and everything. And the next time when he was in the middle of writing the second one, he stopped doing it, and because he was like, oh, I don't think it's for God anymore. I think I'm doing it for another purpose. And so for me, then that's what I start tying it to that, because I'm just like, oh, have is it because I'm writing for an audience? Like I'm going a little bit off track, but I think this is also something that is a continuation of it. So I feel like all of you who are getting those messages right now, I think you guys all need to feel very, very blessed, because it is a blessing. And genuinely, I do understand, like maybe talking about it like, oh, you're channeling that energy. I think it's I know like it sounds a little bit whoa, but I don't think when a lot of people are saying it, it's in sort of a thing where they're feeling like obnoxious about it. It's genuinely one of the most beautiful things. And I genuinely think the like God and the Ahlul Bayt are using you as a vessel to make an impact on so many people out there. And I think I feel that with a lot of like two of the people who are here on K-Work, because their work I'm very familiar with. So I do understand, and I think it creates such a lot of impact.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that as well, and like, one thing is that I don't know if you saw the when what's his name, the guy at NYU, Sheikh
Fayaz Jaffer.
yeah, as
Yeah.
Jafar when he done that thing on poetry, and then I think in so I'm sorry, like if you're not familiar with the text, but like Gamil Ziyarat. So basically it's like a compilation of traditions which have been written about a said topic. And so these are like sort of coming from that. And in terms of poetry, I was looking through that, and I don't paraphrase, like don't quote me on this because I'm paraphrasing, but there was a hadith, a saying which said that like there is none that writes poetry about these events or the divine that he is not assisted by Ruh al-Qudus, which is the Holy Spirit. Like, you know, so that in itself, I think one thing which is interesting, because I also came from like secular writing and then write this work and then go back and forth between the two. And the body of work which exists here, I have to almost treat it like as in with the same prerequisites as I would with worship, right? Like as in I need to be ensuring that I'm giving it the due respect that it requires and the prerequisites that it requires. And by that I just think like it's a really beautiful part, isn't it? Like of taking something and reflecting over it and then writing something which hopefully is for yourself more so, but part of it is also the idea of trying to remove yourself from this and attach it to something which is greater. So it's interesting. Like that's why I don't think there's a right answer. But yeah, thank you for allowing us this space to create, to question, to ponder, and to reflect, and to learn from each other. I've been really inspired.
Beautiful. I'm so glad you've been inspired. That's the best part. I wanted to make one last ask before I end everything. Because I'm a host and I have way too much power. Can we do a picture? So basically I just want to take a screenshot and we can all just like smile. And I'll just post it on my Instagram story. That's probably the only place it'll live. Okay. If my thing will let me screenshot while I'm recording. Yes, it will.
Lynn's trying to fix his hoodie a little bit, you know.
All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3, cheese. Beautiful. Again, thank you all so much for being here with us. Me and Naki are both the workshop coordinators for Poets of the Household. So this was a great, for me, this is my first workshop that I've coordinated. And but this was a great experience to just dip my toe into this community and also be able to talk about a topic that I feel really inspired about. So I really appreciate you all for being here. And again, contributing your work, contributing like your spirit and your energy and your love for writing and creating beautiful, beautiful work. So thank you so much. I'm going to pass it over to my co-host.
Yeah, no, I think you gave the perfect closing remarks. We could probably end it here. Appreciate everyone, and hopefully we see you all in future workshops as well. All right, thank you, everyone.
All right, Ramadan Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum. Goodbye.
See you soon. Bye.
See you next time.